Yeah. So one of the things I noticed in reference to this situation with Jeffrey Epstein and JP Morgan, I noticed that a lot of people are not talking about this story. In fact, Jimmy Dore talked about it. I saw that Whitney Webb was on his show and she came on to discuss it. You talked about it. I talked about it. In fact, I had a video clip from that went viral. It's crazy. Over 100K views. I've never had that happen with the video before. Wow. But when I searched on YouTube, I realized, it's probably because not that many people are talking about this. So I'm curious to get your take from this. Why do you feel not as many commentators are discussing the new developments in reference to Jeffrey Epstein and his connection to JP Morgan?
Well, I think that a lot of people don't really fully understand it. And, Whitney is an incredible journalist, but her stuff is really detailed. And it's like you have to kind of make almost like a chart on the wall and then try to detail it out, all of the connections that she's making. And I think I think for a lot of people, it's pretty overwhelming. They're trying to connect all these dots, but there's just too many moving pieces and too many dots. And so I think that might have something to do with it. Because really her piece talked about how the same players who were behind Jeffrey Epstein, the same power players, were the same players that were behind JP Morgan Chase's CEO, Jamie Dimon. So it wasn't necessarily that these two men were connected. It's that the same players were behind them. And then Epstein was able to move his banking into JP Morgan Chase. And clearly all of these powerful players who were behind the scenes, really turned a blind eye and just kind of allowed the banking to continue without questioning it, without saying, hey, maybe this is being used for nefarious purposes. But to be quite honest with you, with the current case that's actually going on where JP Morgan Chase and Jamie Dimon are named in this U.S. Virgin Islands case, where they're saying, you guys knew you had this bank account from Epstein, and it was used for nefarious purposes. You knew this, and yet you still went ahead and you didn't do anything about this bank account. I'm not 100% certain how they're going to make this case, to be honest with you, because I don't know if they can show. They're going to have to show that because I don't know how much the young women were paid, the young girls were paid. I'm not sure how they were paid, who actually paid them, through which accounts, or, all of that, and how much money of that actually came out. When you're talking about accounts like Jeffrey Epstein's, which were worth millions upon millions of dollars, a few $100 or even a few $1,000 here or there is like lunch for an account like that. So I think it's going to, so I'm not 100% certain, because it's not like large sums of money were going out for potentially nefarious purposes, for criminal activity, I should say. The big power players weren't getting paid millions of dollars to do something nefarious. The illegality would be with the younger women, the younger girls who were paid, right? It's just gonna be a really tough case, I think, to make, and especially if I think the girls were paid in cash. It's gonna be really tough, but nonetheless. Which is unfortunate, because we would love nothing more. The good thing about the case is that it might end up, and I think the real value in it is that we might end up getting some names, because names might need to be named in the case. So that's what maybe the case could bring, but I'm not 100, but who knows how far it will actually go. So I think people just aren't really paying attention to it, because I think it's just one more powerful person that's connected to Epstein, and JP Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon just doesn't seem like, for one, his connections are not the same as all of these other players, right? The other ones, like, were on the island, got massages, they're in the black book. This is a different type of connection that doesn't seem as salacious. And so maybe that's why. Maybe, and people just don't care about JP Morgan Chase's Jamie Dimon. They should. They really should, but they don't.
Good points. A former candidate in the Virgin Islands contacted me after this story broke and said he actually tried to tell people years ago not to take money from Jeffrey Epstein. So apparently this was a recurring thing. And he was referencing Delegate Stacey Plaskett. Now, this is the same woman who wants to send Matt Taibbi to prison, right?
Right.
So, right. She took money from Jeffrey Epstein. And he said going way back, he tried to tell the candidates not to take money from him, but they wouldn't listen. But they won and he didn't. So this gentleman who told me this did not win, but people like Stacey Plaskett apparently did. She's in a weird position too, because apparently she's a delegate. She's in Congress, but she doesn't get to vote.
Right. She's a non-voting member. There's a few of them. Yeah. But she's one of them. She's one of them because the U.S. Virgin Islands is just like a territory of the United States, right? It's a colony, really. Mm-hmm. And so they don't have voting rights. It's a real sham, actually. All the territories should get voting rights, but they don't want to get, they have all this chatter in Congress about, we should make DC a state. That doesn't make any, there's actually a reason why DC is the way that it is. They tried putting the US Capitol in a state, but then the governor was able to because the governor's in control of the National Guard, was able to actually surround the Capitol building and use force to intimidate members of Congress. So they said, well, maybe we shouldn't have this in a state where a state governor can actually coerce us like this and have power over our daily lives and our movement. So that's why they made DC the way they made DC, for a good reason. But I don't understand why members of Congress keep screaming about DC when in reality they should be screaming about places like U.S. Virgin Islands. Those are territory, Guam. These are territories where people are living there. These are their homes. They should be made states. They should be given voting power. And if they're not going to make them states, they should basically make them states. They should give them everything that a state would have, like how some states try to say, well, you couldn't have gay marriage, but you could have a union, but it's all the same. They just use a different name, whatever. But they need to be given all the rights of a state, all the voting rights of a state. There are people there. They deserve that. And they're totally unrepresented. And that it's colonization. And that is exactly what members of Congress should be screaming about. But of course they're not. They're saying they want DC. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know why they ignore these territories. But yeah, she doesn't have a vote.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know that you interviewed Alan Dershowitz, and I saw one of your clips go viral on Twitter, and I was like, oh dear, that he did not like that question. But it's weird to me. I'm like, you're Jeffrey Epstein's lawyer.
Yeah.
You don't think that question is going to come up? And then he tried to say he didn't know that you were going to ask that. But of course, you had receipts, and you said, this is exactly what I told your team when I contacted them for the interview.
Well, and I didn't contact them for the interview. They contacted me multiple times to have him on my show. We did not ask for him. He was asking to be on my show. I hedged it the first couple of times they asked. I was kind of like, I don't know. We'll see. I had to think about it. I was like, if I have him on, I have to ask him about Epstein. So I need to think about this and really prepare for this one. This isn't one I can just kind of have on and ask basic questions. This is somebody I'm going to need to really ask some questions of. So I need to think about it and wait. I wasn't saying no to it. I knew I was probably going to have him on when they approached me. I just wanted time to think about it and think about how exactly I was going to approach it. So finally I did, and we had him on, and I thought that we had made it clear, which we did, that I was going to be asking about Epstein. And he said he was taken off guard. There's no such thing as an ambush interview. He should think, as Alan Dershowitz, who's represented not only Epstein, but he's represented Trump. He's represented Mike Tyson. I mean, a lot of different people that, he should expect to be asked about any of them. He should be expected to be asked about anything in his career. I mean, and not only that, but he's known as like a bulldog attorney. He should just expect this stuff. This is what he does when he represents these clients. He asks the hard questions. He puts people on the stand and he grills them. I don't know why he wasn't prepared, but he was very taken off guard. And he's been asked these questions before. So that's the other thing. It's not like I mean, maybe some of my questions were a little different, but he's definitely been asked about Epstein. But he acted like he'd just never been asked this question, about Epstein before, and he couldn't believe it that anybody would ask him about this. So I don't know.
He tripped up a couple of times there too, because one of the things you did ask about was the massages. And first he said that he didn't get a massage. Then he said he did get a massage, but not a sexual massage. And I'm like, which one is it? And then he went on to say that, well, the massage wasn't done by a younger woman. It was an older woman. You never said it was.
Right. I just said you got a massage. Yeah. He said, it was interesting for 3 different questions. He did that 3 times where he said one answer and then changed his answer. And it's always that first answer that's the true answer, right? So he says, yeah, or he says no. And then he says, yes, I did. Well, maybe the first answer isn't the true answer. It's well, with the other two, because the other two questions were, was Epstein working for Mossad or something? And he said no. They wouldn't hire him. I have been working for the state of Israel since before you were born. I'm like, oh, so you work for Mossad? Okay, got it. and they would never hire Epstein. You would know this because you're in with them. That makes a bit more sense. That does make some sense too. And then the last one being, did Epstein kill himself? And of course not. And then he backpedaled on that one and said, well, no, wait, he did, but yeah.